It's a great honor for me and joy to introduce Julia Bartal. She is part of one of the biggest political movements on this planet called La Via Campesina. Who has ever heard of La Via Campesina? And we just had an insight in what this struggle is about and how violent it is and how important the work of peasants and workers in agriculture is to safeguard all forms of life on this planet, not just the amount of calories we eat every day. And Julia Bartal, for me, is personally one of the people who represent this fight here in our region or in our country or in this part of Europe more than anyone else. Even though she didn't get any prizes yet, she should have. And I remember when I first heard her speaking, that was more than 10 years ago. She was speaking as a part of a group called Bündnis Junge Landwirtschaft, Alliance of Young Farmers. And she was speaking about land grabbing. Probably all have heard about land grabbing before. We usually have like pictures of places in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia and Latin America being taken away by big companies and corporations, hedge funds, but I was very perplexed and surprised because she said, we're talking about land grabbing in Eastern Germany. And Eastern Germany is where we are. This is our region. And I think the strength of a voice like Julia is to make us aware that the solution starts in front of our doorstep, that there's agriculture here. And it's not just about the label that we see, it's about how this food is produced, how the land is treated, who is working in the field. And the amazing thing about Julia is that, of course we know people who do speeches and go to conferences and have exhibitions, but Julia is actually in the field. She is working the land. So it's a voice from below. It's actually from the, I wouldn't say grassroots, it's a root voice from the roots of the things that feed us and all other beings every day. And I don't want to make it too long, but then when she finished that talk that informed us, I have to say, mostly ignorant urban dwellers that have very romanticized ideas of how agriculture looks like or should look like, pastoral scenes of like cows on the meadows and everything is living in harmony. So after she gave us that speech, basically telling us, well, the way the land is distributed, there will be no such farming ever happening again, because the land ownership is the one crucial question in changing the way we do agriculture and changing the way we eat. But after that talk, that was already surprising enough, a big group of people was gathering around her. She's starting to tell a whole different story about how people in Syria that fought for democracy and then were bombed into the ground started to grow the food in the besieged and bombed cities of Syria. And she was one of the people helping or building a support network called 15th Garden, not just to create awareness of what's happening in one of the most disastrous wars in our times, but also created real solidarity in collecting seed, in collecting knowledge, bringing it through the border, and making contact to the people who risk their lives every day. So that's why I think you're an amazing person and should get a prize, at least. And she's still fighting, so she's on the land, she's working with her horses, she's part of the solution, feeding us every day without destroying the planet. And she learned the trade from the very beginning. I don't know the English terms, but she is a Facharbeiterin, Meisterin. She was part of the free education of biodynamic agriculture, so she really knows what she's talking about. And I'm very happy you're here. And one more sentence, because I'm 100% sure you're too humble to say that. So even though she's doing this 2 and more jobs at the same time, you know, being in the field and then writing emails, organizing demonstrations, giving speeches, advocating for just distribution of land, you're still a farmer or a peasant without land. So if there's anybody here who has a solution to that problem, predominantly, it would be great to have it in the region because she really loves this place. Feel welcome to talk to her. Thanks, Julia, for being here.
So I am actually still nervous when I do something like this. And I wrote a speech in German. So we'll do our best all together. Language-wise, I'm very happy to speak in English when I'm talking about the political struggle together, because that's when I'm a citizen of the world traveling. I have to admit, when it comes into my handicraft in agriculture, which I really do on the fields here, and I learned it here, I might miss the one or other word for a tool very specific, because then that's in the German language for me. I'm really happy that I share this space with all of you. I'm really happy to meet Vandana. I've just realized that I meet her currently every 8 years, exactly. 8 years ago, we met in the mountains in Greece with the wonderful Peliti network, a seed savers network in Greece. I came there as a representative of the 15th Garden Syria. Peliti helped us organize seeds of different varieties of the right climate zone. Marco mentioned this work. I really want to remind here of the many, many, many people who have lost their lives and lost their home, and of Syria that has been lost to many of us, and the many other places under war and conflict. I think the strength of a network like the 15th Garden, we had watched in disbelief and in pain. We have watched how many wars and conflicts have buried people alive, have buried homes, have buried political freedoms, but also how they have buried food sovereignty and seeds. Because while people are fighting for their life, it is impossible to protect the seeds. So the 15th Garden is the first network, food sovereignty network, that we took it to our task to defend food sovereignties at times of war. We were tired of watching, as we had seen in the neighboring country of Iraq, that 10, 20 years later, the place, that area, the cradle of humankind, grain production, had lost its varieties. We were tired of watching this loss and counting our dead, but also counting our losses for our future. So the 15th Garden is the first developer of strategies to defend food sovereignty at times of war. And as the wars get more and the conflicts get more, I think people here in the global north need to learn again from these strategies and from this knowledge. Vandana spoke in Greece about us being like rhizoma. So us meeting again, us meeting in different countries, us meeting here. That's where we are the spores, we are the rhizoma. And everything is connected. It's our handicraft, it's our knowledge how to work the soil, how to work with our animals, how to work with our seeds, our plants. But it's also the struggle for human rights. Climate justice, the challenges we face, food sovereignty, and many, many things more, environmentalism, the protection of biodiversity, all of that cannot be defended if human rights are not universal. And I mean it when I say that. I'm happy to be here on this special day, the Day of the Earth. I'm really happy because Neukölln is also my home. I have family here. And I'm really, really happy because it's also the end of the holy month of Ramadan. So many of us here in Neukölln and around the world are celebrating that. So I say, Marhaba ya Neukölln Habibti, Eid Mubarak. I'm really curious about this building. I'm really curious about the life that it will hold, about the meetings we will have. What it promises is very promising, and it's very similar to the people that we are connected with naturally in the La Via Campesina. Now, I'm going to be quite hard on you city people, because I think often you're really hard on us in the way you view us in the countryside. I want to say proudly and remind that the La Via Campesina is 200 million members. So if anybody in the city dares to think that we are backwarded or not well organized, they have to sit down and listen. The La Via Campesina consists of the farmers, but it does not, and of the indigenous people, and of the landless people, and the people working in the agriculture. So we have understood since a long time that we as farmers will not be divided from the workers on the land. Even if we as farmers can hardly survive, it cannot be a confrontation with a fight for a minimum salary for the people working in the agriculture. We as peasants and small-scale and medium farmers, we have farmers around the world. Those of us who have not been indoctrinated completely by industrial agriculture, we have understood that indigenous knowledge is the base of our knowledge. And that this knowledge is the only base to defend land sovereignty and food sovereignty, to protect our forests, our soil, our ground, and our water, and to achieve climate justice. Again, it's justice in the climate struggle that we need. I love the work as a farmer to go in this exchange. I love to be in exchange with the food councils. I love to be in exchange with the young activists of a climate movement. I love the social organizations, the unions, the migrant organizations and the communities around. And I love the organizations very strong in Berlin for the rights of people for renting houses for an affordable price. Because I do think that we cannot solve the things if they are separated from one another. If people very simply in Berlin cannot pay their rent, how are they going to afford to buy good food and make it possible that we have a good income as farmers? So we must always struggle and ask the social questions together. If we look globally, this is even more true. If we look globally, I want to remind you with a few numbers from the World Agricultural Report. 80% of those people starving worldwide are the people that work in agriculture. 80% of those people feeding you all are the ones who are facing hunger every day. From the work being done in agriculture, 70% is being done by women labor, while way under 10% of the property in agriculture, of the land property, of the money flow is in female hands. And I want to remind that this under 10% is also accurate for the global north. So don't just point at the global south and think that we are so much far ahead also in feminist issues. We are constantly played out against each other. As farmers, we are played out against the people that work on the fields. Here in Germany, a debate around agricultural politics is often these poles being put against each other, being pitted against each other. We, with the ABL, the German La Via Campesina movement member organization, we will not be divided amongst farmers, the good or the bad farmers, the bio-certified or the conventional certified farmers. This is not a narrative that we share. We stand up for agroecology. We stand up for our rights. We stand up for an ecologicalization of agriculture on our fields. We stand up to say very loudly that we are being brainwashed by transnational economical interests to believe that agriculture is a contradiction to environmentalism or to climate justice. So we will not be divided also by a naive view on us that the bio farmers are the good ones and my conventional colleagues are the bad ones. Every year we are losing in Germany thousands of farms. And if we don't stand up for these farms, also for the family farms of conventional farmers, then we cannot change agriculture, because every farm that is being lost will be swallowed by the next bigger investor. And it is the farmers and the farms that we need to do agriculture. So if you don't embrace them with all their mistakes, then we cannot change anything. I want to remind that also here, agriculture is the worst paid job, the worst. It is also the job with the most, next to forest work, with the most deadly accidents, amputations, but also chronic illnesses, starting with our joints, our lungs, and many, many others. Also here, farmers, different studies show that farmers, around 50%, face depressions and burnout and other psychological illnesses. Vandana mentioned the suicides in India. India and France are the most famous countries by the high amounts of farmer suicides. So again, don't just look at the global south. Understand that the global north is no better in treating its people that work the land. I'm sick of learning of farmers giving up in depressions or even taking their lives. You have to understand that everything that you demand from us goes with a high risk for us. For decades up here in the global north, you have demanded, and our agricultural schools have taught us, and the advisors have advised us to intensify our production. Intensify, intensify. 3 years ago, we have a milk crisis since the year 2008. 3 years ago, I was still taught to build architecturally my cow stable with a milking house in a way that I can always double and triple the buildings to have more cows. That is still the way how we are being taught. But then society suddenly recognizes bio and regional and says, but that's the way to go. They'll tell me as a farmer that's way better for you. Of course it's better for me, it's what I believe in. But you have to also understand that all the risks are always on us. Agriculture is one of the most, I'm looking for the English word, investment-intensive sectors. We need a lot of money. We have a lot of risk for every change that we make. So don't just think you can make a proposal and it's just a proposal and we'll just deal with it when you don't stand on our side as a society to bear those risks with us. One job here in Germany in agriculture to create it, in average costs 600,000 euros. So if I'm taking that credit at the bank and I'm putting myself in the possible misery of all of those farmers breaking down with depressions and suicide, I need to know that the society that is demanding how we do our work is really standing at our side. So I'm really sorry, yes, we farmers complain when we get a stage like this. I say these things because, of course, intersectionality is the essence of us meeting. We need to recognize who is in what position, who is under which pressure, who has which privilege and which possibility. And sometimes I feel the way how the urban areas treat the rural areas is a little bit like how the global north treats the global south. We are like the exotic visiting ground. You come for a short holiday, it should all be pretty. You're shocked if there's an area that's not pretty. Also that then is our fault. You travel there, and in a way, even though it's the exotic ground, you still think that we're all uneducated, not well organized, a little bit dumb, and a little bit backwarded. And in the same time, you forget that we produce everything the urban area consumes. Everything comes from the rural area. So we are not just an exotic visiting ground. We don't share the same privileges. We have no public transportation, often no fast internet. We don't have cultural spaces. We don't have educational places. So we are tired if we are the ground to project metaphors in an idealized, rustical matter and maybe decorate them with a few cornflowers. As gardeners, as farmers, as land users, we are very, very, very strongly connected to the soil and to the ground. Every day we walk on that ground, but much more. We dig in it, we turn it around, and we often even get stuck in it. Sometimes we crawl on all fours over our ground. And I brought you this because for us it's quite normal to see if we can make a roll out of it or if it just crumbles like the sand that I'm used to in this area. We smell it. It's not dirt. It's a beautiful smell, and I smell it to know if it's healthy. Some of us might even taste it. You say it's from Brandenburg because it's from Berlin. I'm not tasting it. So this soil, it's in the end of a hard working day, it's everywhere. It's stuck in our eyes, it's stuck in our ears, in my nose. And it goes all the way to my bed, often enough. I'll shake it out. So that, for me, is the manifest of us working with the soil. The sad thing is that the soil is also filled with pity. Thousands, no, millions, uncountable amounts of people are also pushed and forced every day onto the ground. They are forced to work on this ground with bent backs, with their hands bleeding in this soil, with rusty tools in the burning sun. And the next day, they might be evicted from the same ground, be pushed away, lose their homes, be pushed from the ground forever. So soil and ground becomes an object for political struggle. It's reduced to main basis only for production. I think I have to tell the dog, Lumpe, komm mal hier. Sorry for that. At least I didn't bring a cow. So while capitalism reduces this beautiful partner of ours just to a mere number for production, we have a much deeper relationship, obviously, to it. I met Valiana and Angel last week here, and they taught us about their relationship to the territorio and about the concept of tenderness in this relationship. And as much as understood, their ground is mainly rocks. So when they work the ground, they'll have a hole and put the seed in between the rocks. So what we have as a soft bed that I learned in my area and in my agricultural education, crumbly soil where I put the seeds, it's very different. And still we share this concept of tenderness. The tenderness is there when we add to the ground our work, when we add the sun, when we add the water, and we add the seed, and the seed starts growing, and the rhizoma starts spreading, and the plant goes up and reaches first a little bit into our direction, and maybe even past us and up to the sky. That's the concept of tenderness. For me, personally, the concept of tenderness is when my horse bites the grass, you know, the sound when they bite and chew. That's, for me personally, the moment I understand the tenderness. So we connect with the soil. Sometimes it's clay, sometimes it's full of sand, sometimes it's rocks. And we connect to it even if it has been degraded. We regenerate it. And we connect to it if it's in private property or not. We build this deep connection, and actually if we want to do our agricultural work well, we have to build this connection. There is no way to work soil in a climate-friendly, soil-friendly, biodiversity-friendly way for the future if we do not really connect to it. Investors will never be able to do that. Land grabbers will never be able to do that. And the soil is the essence of the good part of agriculture. Agriculture, she can be a murderer if it's industrial agriculture. She can be the one destroying the climate. She's also the victim, because when the climate dies, agriculture will die. We will not be able to produce anymore. But agriculture, in another shape and form, can be the healer. And she can only be this healer together with the soil. It is the soil that takes the CO2 into itself. And for this, we need to know our work. And we need to have this connection. And we need to let the soil do her work. So the soil is, metaphorically, she's a storyteller, but she's also the ground for very, very, very pragmatical and practical things that we do every day with her. We have to understand, like scientists as farmers, we have to understand the processes in the soil on one day. We have to feel it, we have to see the things that we don't understand scientifically and still react to it. People have been doing that for thousands and thousands of years when they have been led to do that. And in the same time, we have to be political activists, because nobody is going to do it for us. We have to struggle for our access to land. We have to struggle for our rights. I want you to really understand what that means if we don't fight as a society to let us farmers build this connection to the soil. I've worked for over 10 years with horses in the Brandenburger sand. So all of my education, all of my knowledge is connected, and also all of my investment, my tools, everything I have is connected to working this kind of soil. If you move me 20 kilometers away, 30 kilometers away, where we have clay ground, I begin at zero. My knowledge is not there, my tools are not equipped, my horse needs a second horse because it can't do the work alone in this soil. And I will again repeat the mistakes I did as a young person, because I will have to work on a new land that I don't know how to work on. So you have to understand that we have to secure the land that we work on. We have a situation here, Marco said it 10 years ago. We started as young farmers, and I'm very, very proud that it was actually not the young farmers coming from the universities, but it was the apprentices. It was those really coming from the handicraft education that we started the movement here for access to land in the region. We saw around us all the land, most of it in state property from the socialist history, just being sold out. Nobody was mentioning it. Nobody was talking about it. And we as young farmers started to do that. And I experienced moments where I went to the petrol station, and the lady at the petrol station, she leans over and claps me on the shoulder and says, "At last somebody's saying it." She saw one of our interviews. So us few farmers suddenly started a discussion that now I guess many of you have seen documentaries on Arte, on ARD, on the different channels about the land issue here, about the land being sold out. Nobody had mentioned it almost 20 years after the wall came down, that our region is being sold out. And these people, these investors and these big enterprises that are getting the land because of wrong political decisions, they don't build a relation. They will not do this work. They will not feed the region. They will just burn the land, and if it's not lucrative anymore, they'll move on. And we have lost the chance to bring young people and diverse farming into this region. I want to give you just one example, which for people living in Berlin is very, very obvious. Just a few weeks ago, one 4,000 hectare farm in Brandenburg was sold. And it's not surprising to us, we've seen this happen all of the time, that the investors from out of agriculture come and buy, but it was Quarterbeck was the investor. Quarterbeck is owned 40% by Deutsche Wohnen. So the same investor that has bought your housing in Berlin, that people here are protesting against, is now going onto the agriculture market. So we have the concentration of land in the hands of a few, and now we have the concentration of our livelihood, of our houses, and he's going to build huge agro-photovoltaic things. So also the concentration of energy. Everything that's the ground of our livelihoods belongs to a few. So who doesn't understand that there's a problem in that? I don't know how to help them. We are going through from one crisis to another. One crisis after another. We know we need resilient systems. And in the same time, we're selling out our resilient systems. We are doing the opposite of what we need to survive. Then when a war breaks out, a crisis comes, then suddenly there's the FAO, the UN organization, coming like firefighters to support small-scale farmers and build, because they understand in Ukraine it's the same. The big farms collapse. Immediately it's the small-scale farmers, it's the local farmers. They are feeding the people. So we have to stop to work like firefighters. We have to defend resilient systems before the crisis is there, and in the crisis, but also before. That means to be very clear also for you, those who live here in the region. We have political struggles here. We are at the moment fighting for a historical law. The Agrarstrukturgesetz, okay, help me on with that. Agricultural structural law, that would be historically the first law that would regulate investors on the land buying market here in Brandenburg. You can clap. The thing is, the lobby is really strong. I'm proud that we're discussing this law because, of course, also the struggle of the young farmers and of the farmers of ABL through decades has led that we're even discussing this law. But if we are not strong in the next 2 or 3 months when it's now in the parliamentary process, the lobby will just push it out and it will not happen. And these processes are a global phenomena. That brings me back to how I'm connected to people all over, because obviously the violence we face with our different privileges is very, very different around the world. But the system of selling out the land, selling out the seeds, taking our possibilities as communities and societies to be creative and create our direct surrounding, to be sovereign and in solidarity with each other and tender, that system globally is the same. So I enjoy coming back into the networking. I want to remind that in this networking, nobody shall be overlooked. I want to give you an example because we are here in Neukölln. I love the food councils. Our food councils, if you don't know, ask me later to explain the idea of the food councils. But that's a really good civil society tool. We have reached a lot. We have pressured on the local policies to bring regional food into the kindergartens, into the schools, into the public kitchens. That's amazing. But again, it's a movement that is wonderful, but that here first started off as a, let's say, green, ecological, middle-class, white, academic representation almost only. We are here in Neukölln. Go to Sonnenallee. There is at least 10 handicraft butchers working in Sonnenallee. No German street has that. Almost no German neighborhood has that anymore. And even if we want the food from Brandenburg in the public kitchens here, well, the milk is not going to turn to butter by itself on the way. And the meat will not be processed, and the potatoes will not be peeled. So people in the city tend to forget these things. And middle-class white academic people sometimes forget the other communities around them. And that doesn't just mean that you marginalize people, that also means that you're missing out chances. We're missing out the possibilities that go along with a lot of amazing, skilled people that are forgotten in these processes. So I just want to remind to keep us all working together. I'm really happy. Okay, I'm still looking at this German speech. I'm really happy to be in this house, and that this house is promising us to be this kind of exchange space. That's why I had to drop in a few of those critical issues, that we don't forget about them. And I really hope that as a farmer from Brandenburg and from ABL, that I get to spend a lot of amazing time and days also, because as I told you, Neukölln is my home. It's like you're bringing everything together in one spot. For me, it's really, really great. And I hope the house can live up to its promises and to the hopes, and that we will fill it with that life. And I'm really, really congratulating the team, the house itself. We have to congratulate this house. Welcome, Spore.